Today we will explore a fascinating and widely unknown chapter of human history. Medieval technologies that disappeared not because they were ineffective, but precisely because they worked too well. Before continuing with the video, remember to subscribe to the channel for more documentary narratives like this one. There is something deeply intriguing in the way certain innovations of the past simply disappeared from humanity's records. They were not replaced by superior versions, nor did they fall into disuse due to natural obsolescence. In many cases, they were deliberately abandoned, prohibited, or forgotten, for reasons that had nothing to do with their efficacy. This is a journey through time, an investigation into knowledge that our ancestors mastered and that, in some way, we lost over the centuries. The story that unfolds in the next pages challenges our understanding of progress and forces us to reconsider what it truly means to advance as a civilization. The story begins on a harsh winter morning in some European village of the 13th century. The biting cold penetrates to the bones, snow accumulates on the windows, and yet, inside a modest peasant house, a family wakes up warm. The fireplace has not burned for hours, but the environment remains comfortably warm. The occupants of this simple residence did not possess modern stoves or sophisticated heating systems. They had something different, something that most people today are completely unaware of. They had a heating system that consumed a minimal fraction of the firewood we use today, and kept their houses warm for an entire day with a single morning fire. Medieval peasants developed an ingenious technique that challenges our modern understanding of thermal efficiency. They built horizontal chimney systems that meandered under stone benches and floors before releasing the gases to the outside. A small amount of kindling was enough to heat the entire environment. The stone absorbed the heat from the hot gases that traveled through these underground channels and released it gradually over many hours. While modern homeowners burn enormous piles of wood during the winter, the ancients achieved similar or superior results with a fraction of that fuel. This technique, known today as a mass heater, represents a physical principle elegant in its simplicity. The fire serves not only to generate immediate heat, but to transfer thermal energy to a large mass of dense material. This mass works like a battery, storing heat and releasing it in a constant and prolonged manner. The combustion efficiency in these systems can reach temperatures of up to 1,000 degrees Celsius in the burn chamber. At these extreme temperatures, practically all pollutants are consumed by the fire. The result is a clean burn that produces mainly water vapor and carbon dioxide with minimal smoke. Researchers who studied traditional Russian ovens, direct descendants of these medieval techniques, documented combustion temperatures close to 1,000 degrees Celsius. This intensity of heat ensures that almost all organic material is completely oxidized, eliminating the smoke and pollutants that characterize conventional fireplaces. The numbers are impressive, a reduction of 80 to 90% in wood consumption compared to traditional wood stoves. A single fire per day can keep a house warm for 12 to 24 hours, even in extreme weather conditions that would make anyone seek shelter. The question that naturally arises is why this technology is not widely used today. The answer reveals much about how our modern society functions. Building codes in many countries simply do not have categories for underground horizontal chimney systems. When a building inspector appears with their checklist, they find nowhere to classify such an installation. No category, no approval. The system is not rejected for being dangerous or ineffective. It is rejected for not fitting into the predefined boxes of contemporary bureaucracy. The efficiency proven by centuries of use simply does not matter when there is no corresponding field on the form. Meanwhile, in remote rural regions, families have lived for decades using exactly these systems, with heating costs close to zero even during harsh winters. The thermal mass stores heat for prolonged periods, and a small daily fire is enough to maintain thermal comfort. There are no gas or electricity bills. There is no dependence on fossil fuels, only the intelligent use of physical principles that our ancestors understood perfectly through observation and experimentation over generations. Combustion efficiency represents only the beginning of this journey through lost knowledge. The next discovery transports the investigation to the field of civil construction, where medieval builders mastered a technique that modern engineers have only recently begun to recognize as genius. Concrete buildings constructed in the 1960s are already being demolished due to structural deterioration. Meanwhile, cathedrals erected 800 years ago remain standing, solid, resisting time in a way that shames many contemporary constructions. The Pantheon in Rome, with its unreinforced concrete dome, remains intact after nearly 2 millennia. The secret was in the lime mortar. Medieval builders mixed quicklime with sand to create a material that modern engineers are beginning to admit is pure genius. This compound possesses remarkable properties that modern Portland cement simply cannot replicate. Lime mortar can flex along with the natural movement of the building instead of cracking. But the most extraordinary characteristic was still to be discovered by modern researchers who decided to investigate this ancient material with contemporary scientific tools. Researchers from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology conducted detailed studies on samples of Roman and medieval mortar. What they found transformed the understanding of these ancient materials. Lime mortar has self-repairing capabilities. When cracks appear, the material absorbs carbon dioxide directly from the air and gradually recrystallizes. The compound literally grows again, closing the fissures as if it were a living organism capable of regeneration. The discovery shook the foundations of materials engineering. The researchers identified small fragments of partially reacted lime, called lime clasts, dispersed throughout the ancient mortar. These fragments function as reservoirs of reactive calcium. When a crack forms and water penetrates, it dissolves the calcium contained in these clasts. The dissolved calcium reacts with the carbon dioxide from the air and forms calcium carbonate, which fills the fissure and restores the structural integrity of the material. The process was demonstrated in the laboratory. Concrete samples prepared with Roman techniques had their cracks completely sealed in just 2 weeks when exposed to water. The proof was there, incontestable. Modern Portland cement does not possess this capacity. It simply cracks, traps moisture inside the walls, and transforms buildings into expensive piles of rubble over a few decades. The replacement of lime mortar with Portland cement happened for one main reason: speed. Modern cement hardens faster, allowing contractors to work more quickly and increase their profits. No one worried that the buildings would crumble in 50 years because no one planned to be around to hear the complaints. The irony of this situation did not go unnoticed by some institutions. The Vatican discovered this problem the hard way. For decades, they used modern cement in restorations of ancient structures and realized that the new material was actually destroying the centuries-old walls. The solution was to discreetly return to medieval techniques, using lime mortar again for the repairs. The Catholic Church literally adopted medieval methods in its maintenance schedule, tacitly recognizing the superiority of ancestral knowledge. As the investigation advances through the field of construction, another medieval technique emerges from the shadows of oblivion. This is perhaps the most intelligent trick that ancient peoples ever discovered. They realized that cutting a tree does not necessarily kill it. In many cases, it makes it stronger. Medieval foresters cut trees close to the stump, and instead of dying, these stumps exploded into new shoots. Multiple trunks grew where before there was only one. They returned in 7 to 10 years, harvested again, and repeated the process indefinitely. The cycle could continue for countless generations. This technique, known as coppicing, essentially represents a cheat code for obtaining unlimited wood. A hazel tree subjected to this management can live for more than 1,000 years, the same stump producing usable wood every decade for an entire millennium. The great-grandchildren of the great-grandchildren can be cutting from the same tree planted by their distant ancestors. The concept challenges our linear understanding of the life cycle of plants and reveals a surprising ecological sophistication in medieval practices. Historical records from medieval England demonstrate that this was not a casual practice, but a carefully planned forest management system. A survey of Hayley Wood conducted in 1356 recorded that the woods contained 80 acres and that 11 acres of underwood could be sold annually without causing waste or destruction. Medieval administrators perfectly understood the principles of sustainability that we try to reinvent today. They planned the cutting areas so that the resource would never be exhausted. Studies conducted in the United Kingdom revealed that forests managed by coppicing support 50% more wildlife than conventional forests. The varied light conditions created by rotational cutting produce diverse habitats. Birds, insects, small mammals all thrive in this dynamic environment. A single acre of woods, properly managed by coppicing, provides all the firewood, fence posts, and tool handles that a family needs perpetually. No annual costs for seeds, no replanting, no fertilizers. The medieval peasant had the perpetual supply of wood solved. The journey through lost knowledge continues now toward the walls of houses, where another revelation awaits. Medieval houses used clay plasters mixed with straw, horsehair, and natural fibers. At first glance, it seems rudimentary, but modern scientists discovered that these walls could breathe. Clay naturally absorbs moisture when the air humidity gets too high and releases it when the air dries. The house basically possessed integrated climate control, without electricity, without sophisticated air conditioning systems, just Earth doing what Earth does naturally. German researchers tested this phenomenon recently. Environments with walls plastered with clay maintain humidity between 40 and 60% throughout the entire year, automatically. This is exactly the ideal range where mold cannot grow and respiratory tracts do not become dry. The clay works as a natural regulator, absorbing excess moisture on humid days and releasing moisture on dry days. The result is a balanced internal environment that modern climatization systems try to replicate with high energy consumption. The investigation proceeds now to a construction technique that seems primitive, but actually surpasses many modern alternatives. Wattle and daub is one of the most intelligent construction techniques that humans have ever invented. Medieval builders wove flexible branches between vertical wooden posts. Then, they filled the spaces with a mixture of clay, animal manure, and straw. It seems rudimentary. It works wonderfully. The technique dates back at least 6,000 years and was used in practically all cultures of the world. What modern engineers did not expect to find is that these interwoven branches create natural air pockets throughout the wall. Dead air spaces. And dead air is one of the best insulators known to physics. These rustic-looking walls actually have thermal performance comparable to the fiberglass bats we spend fortunes on today. The principle of insulation by trapped air is well understood by modern science, but our ancestors applied it intuitively centuries before any theory was formulated. Once the clay mixture dries completely, these walls become essentially fireproof. Dry clay simply does not burn. It remains there, indifferent to the flames. A family in Wales needed to repair the walls of their farmhouse. The original wattle and daub was 600 years old and was still standing. The total cost of the repair was below 1,000 rees in materials. The simplicity of the system is its greatest virtue. Any flexible wood works, any clay soil works, any vegetable fiber works. The ancestors built warm and fireproof houses, using what they found within a radius of a few meters around them. The use of local materials was not limited to the walls. The next technique takes the investigation underground, where great-grandparents had something better than refrigerators. They dug holes in the ground. Root cellars for storage kept food cold for centuries before anyone invented a compressor. And they still work better than kitchen refrigerators for certain types of food. At 3 meters deep, the temperature remains around 13 degrees Celsius. It does not matter if it is July or January. The Earth simply maintains this stability. Medieval families discovered this and built underground chambers that maintain temperatures between 0 and 5 degrees throughout the year. 0 electricity, 0 moving parts, 0 monthly bills. Apples lasted 6 months down there. Potatoes, an entire year. Homemade preserves, practically forever. The physics behind this phenomenon is elegant in its simplicity. Below a certain depth, the soil temperature is not affected by seasonal variations on the surface. The large mass of Earth works as a natural thermal regulator. Meanwhile, people lose entire freezers of meat every time the power goes out. A buried container, a concrete tube, even a hand-excavated chamber, any of these can become a functional cellar in a weekend. The solution exists, tested for centuries. The journey now turns to drinking water, where medieval communities discovered how to obtain unlimited clean water without pumps, electricity, or monthly bills. They built stone chambers directly over natural springs and then conducted the water by gravity to their houses through piping. The system is elegantly simple. The water rises from underground, fills a sealed stone box that keeps leaves and animals away, and then flows through pipes to wherever it is needed. The pressure comes only from the elevation. And here is what makes the system brilliant. The water already comes filtered. It spent years infiltrating through layers of rock and soil before reaching the surface. Nature did the heavy lifting of purification. Researchers tested spring boxes in mountainous regions that families have used for generations. The bacterial counts were below official standards for treated municipal water, untreated spring water surpassing city water that went through chemical processing. And what about the purification of water that starts out dirty? Medieval monasteries had a secret weapon against bad water. They built simple beds of sand. The water entered dirty at the top and came out clean at the bottom. The monks did not know why it worked. They only knew that it worked. What they accidentally discovered was that after a few weeks of operation, something remarkable forms on top of that sand. Scientists call it Schmutzdecke, a German word meaning dirty layer. This layer is basically a living ecosystem of beneficial organisms. They devour the bad things, bacteria, parasites, pathogens. The numbers are impressive. A properly maintained slow sand filter removes up to 99% of parasites and bacteria. No chlorine, no chemicals, just sand doing its job. The city of London solved its greatest cholera crisis in the 19th century with exactly this medieval technology. The investigation now turns to pest control. Medieval people did not spray chemicals everywhere when insects appeared. They simply went to the garden, took some herbs, and scattered them on the floor. Plants like tansy, pennyroyal, and wormwood contain natural pyrethrins, exactly the same compounds that commercial insecticides use today. Medieval families were applying industrial-level pest control using plants that grew in their gardens. The results were impressive. Fleas, lice, flies, even rodents disappeared. Even rodents. Recent research has revealed that fresh mint scattered in pantries repels mice so effectively that agricultural grain storage facilities are now studying the practice. Billion-dollar agricultural operations examining techniques of medieval housewives. The cost, zero. A weekly harvest from the garden provides continuous pest control without any toxicity. The solution is literally growing in the backyard. Medieval travelers had a water purification trick that modern filter manufacturers would prefer people not know. When they encountered suspicious water, they threw pieces of charred wood into it. They were accidentally creating activated carbon filtration hundreds of years before anyone understood why it worked. Charcoal is filled with microscopic pores, millions of them, and these tiny tunnels capture harmful substances through a process called adsorption. Modern water filter cartridges and pitcher filters use exactly the same principle, activated carbon. Medieval peasants discovered this with campfire remains. One can make effective filtering charcoal in their own backyard. You burn hardwood in a sealed container until no smoke escapes. That is all. Same principle as expensive commercial filters. Zero cost. Preserving food without refrigeration is where things get really interesting. Fermented preservation kept food safe for months at room temperature. No electricity, no special equipment, just salt, a container, and patience. Vegetables are packed in salt, submerged in water, and you wait. Natural bacteria begin to produce lactic acid. This acid reduces the pH to levels so low that harmful organisms simply cannot survive. It is like creating a hostile environment where only the good ones thrive. Captain James Cook sailed for years without losing a single man to scurvy. His secret was barrels of fermented cabbage. Vitamin C actually becomes more bioavailable after fermentation than in fresh vegetables. The body absorbs it better. Centuries before anyone understood vitamins or nutrition, sailors discovered empirically that certain fermented foods prevented devastating diseases. The journey continues to another medieval coating that kills bacteria on contact. That bright white seen on old farmhouses and Mediterranean villages is not paint. It is lime washing with lime. And it does something that modern paint will never do. It kills bacteria on contact. Medieval farmers discovered that slaked lime mixed with water created a coating with a pH so high that mold, fungi, and bacteria simply could not survive touching it. They painted everything with it. Studies of traditional Mediterranean houses showed that lime-washed walls present 60% less mold than walls covered with modern paint. The benefits go beyond germ elimination. Lime washing allows walls to breathe. Moisture passes through it instead of being trapped and causing rot. It also reflects heat, keeping buildings remarkably cooler in the summer. That is why every Greek island looks like a postcard of white buildings. The next technique involves something unexpected: sheep. When devastating forest fires are discussed, everyone blames climate change, power lines, dry conditions. But almost no one talks about the sheep. Medieval communities discovered this centuries ago. They herded sheep and goats on the hillsides around their villages for a specific reason: fire prevention. These animals eat exactly what burns most intensely. Dry grass, shrubs, invasive weeds, everything disappears. And while they eat, they are fertilizing the soil. Modern environmental regulations have severely restricted grazing on public lands in many countries. The brush has accumulated year after year. Some cities are beginning to realize the value of this ancestral approach. Oakland, California, began to hire herds of sheep to clear hillsides around neighborhoods. The cost is 75% lower than sending crews with machinery. A small herd of 20 sheep can clear an entire acre of brush in 2 weeks. The smoking of meats deserves special attention. Medieval smokehouses kept meat edible for years, not months, years. And the secret was not some complicated process. It was literally just smoke. When wood burns slowly, it releases more than 200 different compounds: formaldehyde, phenols, organic acids. These compounds create an invisible armor on the meat that bacteria simply cannot penetrate. Monks in medieval monasteries documented hams lasting up to 7 years without any refrigeration. The key was cold smoking, keeping the temperature low, letting the smoke work for weeks. And the result was meat that could survive a journey across the whole of Europe. The smoke creates an acidic, oxygen-free coating on the surface of the meat. Bacteria need moisture and oxygen. You remove these conditions and the meat becomes virtually immortal in terms of preservation. And so we reach the end of this journey through forgotten knowledge, technologies that our ancestors used daily, and that in some way were forgotten, prohibited, or regulated into obscurity. Heating systems that consumed a fraction of the firewood we use today. Construction materials that self-healed and lasted for centuries. Forest management techniques that provided unlimited wood for generations. Food preservation methods that worked without electricity. Water purification systems that surpassed modern chemical treatments. The central irony of this narrative is that these technologies were not abandoned for being inferior. They were abandoned because they did not fit into bureaucratic categories, because they did not generate enough profit for intermediaries, because their simplicity challenged the need for specialists and consultants. The medieval peasant, often portrayed as ignorant and backward, possessed practical knowledge that modern engineers are only just beginning to rediscover and scientifically validate. Perhaps it is time to start remembering, to question why we accept the planned obsolescence of our buildings as inevitable, to ask why simple and effective systems are prohibited while expensive and complex alternatives are mandatory, to consider that our ancestors, without access to laboratories or computers, developed solutions that remained effective for centuries or millennia. The wisdom of the past is not a relic to be admired in museums. It is a living resource, a repository of time-tested solutions that can inform our present and future choices. The medieval technologies described in this journey do not represent a return to primitivism, but a recognition that not every innovation represents progress, and that sometimes the smartest path is to look back before moving forward. If this journey through lost knowledge resonated with you, consider being part of our community of explorers of the past. Subscribe to the channel to receive more documentary narratives that unveil the forgotten secrets of human history. Leave your comment sharing which of these technologies surprised you the most, or perhaps an ancestral technique that your own family still preserves. And do not forget to like this content if it expanded your view of what our ancestors really knew. Every subscription, every like, every comment helps us continue unearthing these treasures of wisdom that time almost managed to erase. Together, we can ensure that this knowledge is not lost again,